Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So this is part 2 for chapter 2. So in the previous chapter discussions, we actually talked about the production possibility frontier model. Well, in this video, we are going to continue the topics and try to explain why trade makes sense. So the first question we would like to ask is, well, why we are actually having so many trades in our life? Well, we're not only just talking about how nations are trading with others, but we are also referring to the case where we as an individual always trading with other people as well. Well, why we are actually buying breakfasts but not making on our own, while we are taking buses to school or work but not just walk, or maybe why we are buying computer from Apple's or maybe other manufacturers but not making the computer on our own. Well, all these different trades that happens so often in our life, but we never actually question it. Well, fortunately, economics actually provides some insight and answer to these questions. Well, in the 17th centuries, we actually have an economist. His name is called David Ricardo. He came up with a theory called Comparative Advantage that actually give us some insight about why trading actually makes sense. So before we moving too far, I know that there are some terminology confusions that could possibly happen. So let me just explain the difference between absolute advantage and comparative advantage, just in a very general sense. But most of the time when we're looking at a absolute advantage, we only refer to someone or maybe a country that can produce more of a good than the other country in an absolute term. So that means, well, if China can produce 100 computer versus, let's say, Vietnam's can produce 80, well, China has the absolute advantage in the productions of computer. But it doesn't really mean much, well, in that case. It's just an absolute number. On the other hand, well, in these sections, we want to focus more on the comparative advantage, which is the theory of comparative advantage discovered by David Ricardo, so that we can actually explain why trade makes sense. So the comparative advantage basically describes when there is a country or maybe an agent that has lower opportunity costs of producing a good than the other countries. So it's about opportunity cost in the comparative advantage, but not so much about the absolute terms. So today we are going to use a two people PPF models to basically explain why trade actually makes sense in our daily life. So we are going to make a case here. Let's suppose we have two individuals, one name's Kelvin and the other one's Brenda. Let's suppose they are living together. And every morning they were wondering the questions, well, who should produce what? Right? So Calvin can produce pancakes or coffee, as well as Brenda can also produce the two things. And obviously the problem is they can produce them in different combinations. So we want to actually find out that if there is an opportunity for them to get the most coffee and pancakes when they are working together. Well, working individually, we are pretty clear what maximum number of pancakes or coffee they can produce for themselves. But we are actually asking the questions here, how they can combine together to make an effort to do things together in order to go beyond the boundaries, right? So the boundary that we are talking about here is the production possibility frontier we described in this table. Again, the idea is we are trying to find a possible trade scenario for both Calvin and Brenda so that after they trade, they can get beyond their own PPF. Again, we are talking about they both get beyonds. Not just Kelvin get beyond, but Brenda get within the boundaries. Or Brenda get more coffee and pancakes, but Kelvin has to get less coffee and pancakes. We're talking about an opportunity here where both can actually get more coffee and more pancake at the same time than they are doing it on their own. Well, in order to find out what's the possible solution here, we have to first start with step one. Step one basically asks us to calculate opportunity cost for each person on each items that they produce. Well, calculating opportunity cost now it's not that much of a difficult for us because we know the equations to calculate the opportunity cost to produce one more pancake from Brenda and the opportunity cost to produce one more coffee from Brenda. So again, we're using the same standard equations here, using the maximum the change of coffee divided by the change of pancakes to get the opportunity cost to produce one more pancakes, and vice versa. So we have already making these decisions to take the maximum value and the minimum value from these tables in order to make the math a little bit easier because it's always easy to work with the number zeros, right? So as a result, the opportunity cost to produce one more pancake is going to be 15 divided by 9 and 5 over 3 coffee. So to get one more pancakes, Brenda has to give up 5 over 3 cups of coffee. Well, just on the mathematical purpose, would like to remember that in our very first algebra class, in order to calculate this slope of the lines on the graph, we're using the rise over runs, which is the change of the y-axis divided by the change of the x-axis. Well, which is exactly the same concept that we use to produce that opportunity cost calculations. Remember, change of the coffee divided by the change of the pancakes. It's basically the same as the change of the y values divided by the change of the x values on the graph. So therefore, the opportunity cost that we have been always calculating in our model, it's basically the slope of the production possibility frontier lines that we drew out on the graphs. Now, with all the calculations that I have done for you guys, I got the following numbers. So to get one more coffee produced by Brenda, Brenda has to give up 3 over 5 pancakes. To get one more coffee from Calvin has to give up 2 pancakes, right? With all the numbers that we calculate, we can now then compare this number to get a sense of what we call comparative advantage. Let's suppose we want to actually ask Brenda and Calvin to produce one more pancake. We would like to ask the question, who can produce that one additional pancake by giving up less coffee? Well, in this case, Brenda has to give up more than one coffee, and Calvin can only give up just half of the coffee. So therefore, Calvin's will have the comparative advantage to produce pancake. Vice versa, in this case, Brenda will have to give up less than one pancake to get one more coffee, and Calvin will have to give up 2 pancakes to get one more coffee. And as a result, Brenda has the comparative advantage to produce coffee. Well, why do we care about this comparative advantage? Well, because after we identify this comparative advantage, we can actually use it to specialize a certain types of production by someone in this scenario here. So the specialization concept here is fairly easy. So the concept here basically suggests if there is one person that has comparative advantage on certain products, this person should only specialize producing that product. And as a result of that, the two people will be trading with each other in order to get the best outcome from the trades. So in this case, Well, Calvin is going to focus on the productions of pancake, which he can get 12 pancakes out of the productions, versus Brenda is going to focus on making coffee, and she will get 15 coffee max. Well, now let's give a trade scenario so that we can actually see if they are actually better off. So let's suppose Brenda would trade 7 coffee for 6 pancake from Calvin. In this scenario, Brenda will get 6 pancakes and 8 coffee, and Calvin will get 6 pancakes and 7 coffee. And how do we know that they both are better off? Well, if we look back to our models. So now that we're comparing the production possibility frontier for Calvin and Brenda from the original sets to this new trading scenarios, we found out that Calvin can now getting more coffee and more pancakes comparing to what he was able to produce for himself, right? The boundary, it's basically way below that point comparing to the previous case. And Brenda, in this case, also it's doing better because, well, she has a productions of pancakes and coffee to enjoy it beyond what she could possibly produce for herself. Well, as a result, looking at these plots, we know that both Calvin and Branders are better off when they are trading with others if they choose to specialize on what they are capable to produce the most efficiently. The constraint on trades is also another very practical things to consider when we think about trades across nations. So whenever trades happens, of course, we know that they are searching for a trades or specialization scenario that benefit for both country. But sometimes we have to also consider the transaction costs like shipping, communications, operating costs, and such. Also, we know that in the reality, the PPF model, it's not a linear model that we have seen in this example, right? So they are usually outgoing PPF that demonstrates the increasing opportunity cost scenarios. And as a result, the specializations calculations might not be as simple as we demonstrated in this example. But it doesn't eliminate the case that there is always an opportunity for two countries to specialize on what they are capable to do the best and get even more than what they are able to get from the PPF. Sometimes trades can also hurt local industries, and you have heard that in many news in the previous years where a job is being taken, the local industry is failing when they're competing with the global industries. So it's possible that the local industry might get hurt and getting some people lay off because they are being eliminated by the competitions globally. When we talk about trade, of course, we have to also consider what types of economies that we are trading with and how they are making those decisions. So there are some economies out there called the centrally planned economies, such as Soviet Unions in the past, or North Korea right now, or Cuba right now. Those countries are usually very centrally decision-making economies models where the central governments will make decisions for people or trades or almost every decisions for the nations versus there might be another side of the spectrum. It's called a market economy where the economy activities or economic activities are basically driven by the markets itself and freedoms of market it's basically released by the central authorities in the country. Examples for that would be something like Japan's or maybe United States or maybe UK. So this different kinds of economy system, of course, will be uh, uh, making trades very differently. So the more market-based economies is going to be uh, promote most of the time promoting more trades, right, with others, versus where centrally planned economies are usually very closed economy that they're putting a lot of restriction to trade with other country as well. And of course, there's something in the middle, right, of the mix, like in China, where they are becoming more open to trade and more open to the international world versus in the past. So there are some practice questions that cover in this PowerPoint slides, which I will suggest people to try out. And this is basically a very simple questions that I am not going to go over here in this video lecture, but these are the questions that you will see in the assignments problem as well. So that's wrap up the chapter's discussions for today. And hopefully this lecture is giving you some insights about why trade is important and how we are going to explain the benefits of trades in an economic model like the PPF models that we have just discussed. And thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next chapters.